you've got a polyp. I'll just remove it. Oops, sorry, I couldn't get it out of my finger. Maybe not so good poo if you've got little pellets. In this video, I'm going to give you my unbiased and unvarnished opinion on the Zoe Gut Health app. What it is, why I decided to try it, and most importantly, what my results were. Before we begin, I must tell you that I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a health professional, nor am I qualified in any way to give medical or dietary advice. I'm simply an over 50 woman who takes care of her health, and what follows are my personal opinions and experiences. I'd been aware of the Zoe Health test programme since 2021 when I watched a journalist called Gemma Evans from the Health Hackers YouTube channel talk about her experiences of using Zoe to track her gut health. As someone who's always struggled with her weight and having had problems with my gut over the last few years, I was really interested in what the Zoe app could do for me and my health. I'd had issues with my weight since I was about 14, and there'd been times when I'd been very overweight, up to about 28 pounds. So I was interested to know whether the Zoe app could help me to lose weight, even though I was probably only a maximum of 7 to 10 pounds heavier than I would like to be. And the whole purpose of the app is to personalise nutrition, specifically for you, the individual, and your personal responses to food. I was also interested in the Zoe Gut Health app because I'd been using the Zoe Health app during COVID. Now, this was tracking people's experience of COVID and their general health during the pandemic, and it was tracking them so much better than the government-backed app. And I used to log my symptoms along with 4 million other users in the UK. I knew a little bit about Tim Spector because of this health app, so I knew his creds were good. Now, watching the Health Hackers video, it certainly seemed like the Zoe app was a bit of a faff, and I wasn't entirely sure that I was going to enjoy using the programme. But nevertheless, I put my name down, and as soon as it launched in the UK, and that it wasn't prohibitively expensive for me, I signed up. Now, you might be thinking, why did I sign up? My mum died at 69 and lived a very unhealthy life except for the last few years, by which time it was too late to repair the damage. So I want to give my body the best chance of living well as living long. I should point out that my diet wasn't bad at that stage. I did eat a lot of veg and some fruit, but it was very samey. I'd eat more or less the same breakfast and the same lunch every day. Only my dinner was a little bit more varied. Both meals tended to be plant-based, with milk and yogurt at breakfast and cheese at lunch. But I knew I needed to make some changes to see some improvements. Now, I should mention here that before I even started the Zoe test, I'd actually written a diet book on how to lose weight after menopause. And in order to write that book, I had read quite widely around the subject. I'd read Dr. Giles Yeo's book on calories, and I'd also read Dr. Saira Hameed's book called The Full Diet, where she'd put patients on a Mediterranean diet and they'd cut out sugar. Now, Dr. Hameed's book also recommended intermittent fasting, which I'd been practicing more or less consistently for the last 10 years or so, and that was down to the dear departed Dr. Michael Mosley, whose books on intermittent fasting I'd also read. So I had skin in the game, so to speak. And I was pretty well versed in diets and healthy eating, even if I didn't always practice it myself properly. But I did know quite a bit about it as an amateur, so to speak. And so it was in November 2022, I received my Zoe box and made a start. Actually, before I received the box, and I think this is the sequence anyway, but forgive me, my memory's a little bit hazy now, I had to complete a questionnaire about my health and log it into the app. Now, this app was going to be my guide throughout the process, throughout the whole Zoe experience, especially in the first 2 weeks, where I'd be wearing a glucose monitor. The app is interactive and it's on hand to answer any questions you may have through the process. So about how to use it, about how to test yourself, and it also records all the dietary information gleaned from your tests and also the logging of your meals, which you have to do every day. So it's quite labour intensive. And I had to find the time to allocate to setting the whole thing up, storing the information, doing the tests, and monitoring things. So the first few days, so the large yellow box arrives, and you're not entirely sure what day it's going to arrive on. So I had to clear some time to decide when I was going to start the programme. And in the meantime, you have to put your muffins, of which more later, in the freezer until you're ready to start. Eventually, I identified a week, well, 3 days in fact, that I thought I would need to get started. And then I'd be monitoring things for a couple of weeks until I took my blood sensor off, of which more later as well. Finally, the day dawned when I was ready to start, and I'd taken out the muffins from the freezer and defrosted them. And the idea is that you have to eat these muffins during a certain time, and then you test your blood sugar. So, eating these muffins was very difficult. I thought, oh, it'll be fine. I haven't actually eaten a muffin for ages, but it'll be fine. But first of all, you have to like vanilla, or force yourself to like it while you're eating them, because they are very vanilla-y. And they basically taste of cardboard and vanilla. And you have to eat them within 15 minutes, which again I thought, oh, that's no problem at all. But honestly, not easy, because you're not allowed, as I remember it, to drink water along with them. You must just eat the muffin and nothing else. And I think you have to eat these 3 muffins over a period of 6 hours or so, and you can't eat anything else or drink anything else during that time. And once you've eaten the muffins, you then have to do a blood test, which is going to check your blood glucose levels. Now, having read the little booklet again, it's reminded me about the blood test, and I wondered whether, because I had real difficulty extracting blood for the blood test, it was because I'd been taking a low-dose aspirin for the last few years every day, and that may have stopped the blood flow coming easily, because I really struggled to get any blood out of my finger at all. So I followed the instructions to the letter, as best I could, which are quite complex and involve running your finger under hot water for quite some time and getting the environment ready for you to be able to squeeze out the blood. I feel a bit squeamish just describing it. And I really didn't enjoy that side of it at all. And in fact, because I was struggling to get any blood out at all, and you have to put it on the little slide, I had to with one hand contact someone at the app to ask what to do when I was struggling while trying to get the blood out and keep everything clean. So it wasn't the easiest. Anyway, eventually I managed to do it and get it ready to send off. And then the other complicated thing was fitting the blood sensor, in which I believe it's the same as diabetics have to wear to regulate their blood sugar levels. Of course, I hadn't thought about this all in advance, but the sensor is going to have needles that go into your arm. And when I eventually did manage to apply the sensor, I got a load of blood running down my arm, which is typical, isn't it? I couldn't get it out of my finger, but had no problem when I stuck the sensor on my arm. Anyway, eventually I got the sensor on and it all dried up and everything was fine. And interestingly, once I'd got it on, I forgot all about it and was able to sleep perfectly fine with it on, even if I lay on this side. And the final test, which is a slightly more ignominious one, although when you get to my age and you've already done some bowel tests, it was actually fine, and you have to send that off as well. And then you have to send all this off to Zoe for them to analyse. So once that's all done, you can then start to use the app to try different foods that they recommend you try and different combinations as well. Now, I struggled with this quite a lot because it's very much set up for the US market, or it certainly was at the time, and I'm based in the UK, and it didn't really take account of British eating habits, which I think in some ways are quite different from US eating habits. For example, it kept mentioning bagels, which are not really a staple of British diets, I would argue, although let me know in the comments if you disagree. And I didn't really feel inclined to eat a bagel when the app told me to, because it's not something that's part of my daily diet. In fact, I think part of the issue I had with the Zoe app was that my eating habits were pretty healthy already. So I found it difficult when they were suggesting I eat some high-calorie foods or high-fat foods that I didn't eat anyway. The other thing that I found quite irritating about the app was that the language was a bit, well, juvenile. All the awesome and way to go comments. I know it's meant to be encouraging, but I just didn't warm to it. I suppose I'm just an old cynic. So don't go by me, and it certainly shouldn't deter you from using it. I just want to give you as much info as possible if you are considering giving it a go. So the next thing I needed to do was to get to grips with the app food scores while I was waiting for the report on my health, which takes about a couple of weeks. You get 2 reports on your health. One is your gut health score and one is on your blood sugar or glucose scores. And I'll reveal my results in a moment. So how does the app work? So the app guides you to log your meals, and when you log them, you will then see a score for the type of meal and the content of the meal that you're planning to eat or have eaten. So the higher the score, the healthier your meal is. So ideally you want to get 75 and above on a regular basis. So for example, if you're eating a piece of beef, that's going to be a low score because it's considered not very good for you. Whereas if you're eating a lot of green vegetables, you're going to get a much higher score. Cheese, as far as I remember, which I absolutely love, was somewhere in the middle. So that was good to know. But white pasta, potatoes, bread, they were all high scorers. And even brown pasta, which is supposedly healthier for you, wasn't that much higher than white pasta. Let's face it, these are all things that we already know from our calorie counting days. Because we know that we shouldn't eat a lot of bread and pasta and potatoes and rice and sugary and high-fat foods. And we know we should be eating more pulses, more beans, more oily fish, more fruit and vegetables, and nuts and seeds. And these are all the types of foods that are going to score the highest. Now, while I was logging away and trying to eat more plants, Tim Spector brought out a book called Food for Life, which I decided to buy as I'd heard him talk about it on the radio, and I thought it would help me understand a little bit more about specific plants and their nutrients, and issues like organic versus non-organic food, issues with eating dairy, vegan diets, and that sort of thing. And I have enjoyed dipping into it and learning why certain plants are better for you than others, especially the brightly or intensely coloured varieties. Now, the app subscription lasts for 3 months, but as the weeks went on, I lost interest in logging my meal, as it was very time consuming. And also the app doesn't have all the meals that you might be eating. So for example, if you're eating out at Pret a Manger or another food chain, it's not going to have every meal that you are going to be eating in there, in which case you might have to put all the individual ingredients in, and who can be bothered with that? Although it is true to say that you can ask the app, believe it or not, to find the calorific or the score value of a particular meal, which it will do in a certain time. But I did try to follow the Zoe scoring system in my day-to-day life, which was really, like I said earlier, about eating as much fruit and veg as you can, and then bringing in some proteins and some good fats, particularly olive oil, and cutting down on meat, particularly processed meat like bacon and sausages. Now, I'm going to mention the word poo or poop. Now, it's nearly 2 years since I undertook this programme, and as I've relived it, as it were, I've remembered that there's a whole section on poo or poop. Now, I think this was about logging your poo possibly after you sent the test off, or it might have even been before, I can't honestly remember. But the idea is that there are various different types of poo or poop. Well, there's good poo and maybe not so good poo. And this really reminded me of how, as a mother, I used to check my children's poo to see how healthy I thought they were. So if you got little pellets, you thought, well, maybe that's not terribly good. And if it was a bit softer, sorry, I know this is a bit unpleasant, it was probably better. Anyway, enough said. That's part of the programme, so it is helpful, I think, to understand your gut health if you understand a little bit about how what you're putting in impacts on what you're putting out, so to speak. And so to my reports, and firstly, my blood sugar report. I'm happy to say that this report was very good, and it appeared that I don't really get any blood sugar spikes. Now, I think I probably knew that anyway because I didn't feel that I got them on a daily basis, and the only time I did notice that I got a sugar spike was sometimes if I'd eaten a croissant, I didn't feel all that great. But particularly, I remember an incident where I drank a very sugary cold drink quite a few years ago now from a chain, and I felt so unwell I thought I was actually going to faint, and I had to sit down on the pavement and wait until it had passed. So I was aware that a real infusion of sugar was bad for me. But the gut health report was a little bit more interesting. Now, this was the one that I was keen to know about because a few months before I'd been to my GP because my gut hadn't been feeling great, and he'd actually sent me for a colonoscopy. And thankfully there was nothing to worry about, although I must admit when I was having the test, which was fine, it's the preamble to the test. If you've not had it before, the preamble to the test is, at least in the UK, you have to drink Movicol, I think it's called, because you have to make sure that your gut is completely empty. And so when I went for the test and I'm lying there in a slightly sort of ignominious position, I can't feel anything, and the doctor's kind of probing around inside, and he said, "Oh, you've got a polyp. I'll just remove it. Oops, sorry, I couldn't get hold of it." Lovely. Anyway, eventually I'm sure it came out, because after that it was all fine. However, when I say it was interesting in the fact that it showed that actually my gut was fine. In fact, it showed that my microbiome was very good, very high, in fact. So in truth, it seemed that all was well with my body. And that in itself was very valuable to me, as it showed me that I was doing all the right things to help me to live well. I probably just needed to improve the variety of the fruit and veg that I ate, and maybe cut down a little bit on dairy and meat according to my scores in the app. Now the key question is, did I find that my gut health improved after I stopped using the app? Well, yes, I did. I started to realise that I needed to introduce more variety into my diet, more colours, for example, more types of fruit and vegetables. But I have to say that I attribute that to reading and digesting, if you'll pardon the pun, Tim Spector's book. I found the info in the book really helpful. For example, did you know there's virtually no nutrition in an iceberg lettuce? Or that carrots were originally a dull white colour, but Dutch farmers decided to introduce a new variety and coloured it orange to suit the national colour? Also, when buying kimchi, which I now eat every day, don't choose one steeped in vinegar because it kills off all the good nutrients. I suppose what I have taken away, which is great news for me, is that I don't have sugar spikes and I'm on a pretty even keel when it comes to the foods I eat. My most important improvement is with my gut health, because I now feel confident that I'm eating the right things and the right combinations, up to a point anyway. Although of course I have some days when I'm not as good as I should be, but generally speaking I eat a lot of fruit and vegetables in a day, and a lot of variety during the week, and I feel better for it. So the big question is, would I recommend the Zoe programme? If you are looking to improve your diet and know the current impact your diet is having on your body, you can take steps to improve it by using the Zoe app. I can imagine that it would be quite an eye-opener for people whose diets are poor and who may be a little bit overweight and who want to improve their diets and their general overall health. I would also say it's for people who like to be told what to do, to be guided, to have their hands held. And I'm a little bit resistant to that. So maybe that's why I lost interest in it after a while. I'm not exactly sure how much it costs now, but I think it was about £200 to set up and another £300 or £400 for the whole programme of 3 months. So it is quite an investment. But if you don't have the means to do that, or the inclination, I would definitely recommend buying Tim Spector's book. And it's only a tenner. You'll learn a huge amount from that. And it's full of amazingly useful information about the type of foods we eat. And I think you'll find if you do that, your gut health will improve. And you won't necessarily have to know what foods you react to as an individual, because that's what the Zoe app is about. It's about personalised nutrition. And I understand why that's important, but I think we can do that for ourselves if we just learn about the foods that we are putting into our bodies. So, there you have it. That is my experience of using the Zoe programme. And I hope it's been helpful. And let me know in the comments, have you tried it or would you try it? Actually, I ought to mention as well that I love listening to or watching the Zoe podcast because they have some really interesting guests on there. So they talk about their own work, but they also talk about the work of other scientists. So if you've enjoyed this video, I'd be so grateful if you'd give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell, because all those 3 things help my little channel to grow. And if you'd like to hear more from me, I have a monthly newsletter. And in that, I don't just talk about my usuals actually, which are beauty, fashion and lifestyle, of which health is very much a part, but also music, books, podcasts, theatre, film, and all the other bits and bobs that bring us joy. And thank you so much for watching. It means the absolute world to me that you take some time out of your day to watch my videos. I really do appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you on my next one. Bye!